Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for making your way on this very hot afternoon to the East-West Center here in Washington. A good colleague of Professor Mochizuki is promptly retired for the occasion. He'd be comfortable in Okinawa or Hawaii. And delighted to have our colleagues and guests here from Okinawa as well. Those of you who are in the room are undoubtedly aware of the long-standing issue of U.S. presence on Okinawa and swirling issues around that presence. And it's with great delight today that we have colleagues to discuss it from a perspective that we don't often get to hear. And the New Diplomacy Initiative has put together a report based on a series of workshops that they've been doing. It's an opportunity for us to hear some views from Okinawa. And we have, of course, a long-standing and distinguished expert on Japan and the region, but particularly the Okinawa issue, in Mike Mochizuki, to give some comments as well. I'll tell you up front, because we have 3 speakers, including one with some translation requirements, bear with us as we go through the initial presentation. They will try to keep them limited so that there's some time for Q&A. And I just want to mention that today's program is on the record. It is being podcast for those who couldn't be present with us physically. So just be aware of that when we move to the Q&A session as well. With that, I'm absolutely delighted. I'm not going to take time from the program to go through each bio. We have very distinguished people on the panel, and the bios are in your invitation and in the material handed out. So let me first and foremost welcome all of you and invite Yara-san to begin our discussion. Oh, will you start first? Okay, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Sayo Saruta, Director of the New Diplomacy Initiative, a think tank based in Japan. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very much honored to have this great opportunity to give a talk here. Today, we will introduce our proposal, a new vision for Okinawa and Asia-Pacific security, a recommendation from the New Diplomacy Initiative. I actually lived in D.C. until several years ago, and I actually participated in this kind of event a lot like you are here, and learned how policies are made. Many Japanese politicians and scholars come to D.C. to propose many policies. But in general, as in the city, it is very rare to hear different policies from current government positions. For example, in the issue of Okinawa base, if you do the public opinion poll in Japan, not only in Okinawa, but in mainland Japan, a lot of poll results show that majority of the people are against the new base construction in辺野古, Okinawa. But I hardly hear Japanese voice in this city representing the opposition. This made me organize the Okinawan delegations and to bring their voices to DC. Through this work, I met several lawmakers and experts in the US saying that I understand what you said, but I understand what you said, but is there any alternative option other than辺野古option? So today, we would like to show the option two governments can take. So before explaining the proposal by Mr. Ayala, first, myself would like to give a summary of the Okinawa-based background and current situation. As you know, a large portion of the U.S. armed forces which cover the Asia-Pacific region are located in Japan. And most of those are located in Okinawa. Can you actually, no, it's one okay. Located in Japan, and most of those are located in Okinawa. As you can see, As you can see, the total, next, can you please control it? Sorry, I don't know how to change it. As you can see, the total is about 41,000. That consists of almost half of the total deployed forces in Asia-Pacific region. Okinawa hosts 26 of the total military strength in the Asia-Pacific. And within Japan, 61% of the forces are concentrated in the island. Next, please. 70 of the bases in Japan are located, 70% of the US bases in Japan are located on Okinawa Island, which comprises less than only 1% of the land area of Japan. And those bases take up a full 20% of the land on Okinawa Island, when Okinawa people make up only 1% of Japan's population. Blue, can you change it? Yeah. Blue part area on the map of Okinawa are US military bases or training area. Also, the island is surrounded by sea training area. In the case of Okinawa, military bases are three-dimensional. Land, air, and seas are largely controlled by the US military. Apart from the size and range of control, it is also the type of composition of the US military that Okinawans are concerned about. The biggest presence in Okinawa is the US Marines, which occupy around 70% of total bases. Many people in Japan, maybe also in the United States, believe Okinawa was filled with US Marine bases ever since the war in the Pacific. But this is not true. They were in Gifu Prefecture and Yamanashi Prefectures. They came to Japan after Korean War as a strategic reserve by backing up land forces in South Korea. In February of 1956, Marines moved to Okinawa. Korean Peninsula was a long way distant from Okinawa compared to Gifu and Yamanashi Prefecture, which is located in the middle of the Honshu Island in Japan. What's more, there were no ships in Okinawa to convey Marines for missions. They have to use a ship from Sasebo Nagasaki, which is also in the mainland Japan. Many problems stem from the large presence of US military, especially US Marines in Okinawa. There is noise pollution and environmental effect. Crime rate of the US military is so high as one crime in 3 days. There are 14 cases per year on average of frequent flight accidents. 14 cases per year. The basis is an obstacle of local economic development. However, the Phutema issue probably is the ultimate issue now. This is a place where the Phutema Marine Air Station is located. That is in the center of Okinawa City, a few miles away from the Okinawa's capital city, Naha, which is, I think, around here. As you see in these photos, the densely populated Okinawa City has long been disturbed by the congested living conditions, noise pollution, and possible dangers of aircraft flying over the city for continuous flight training. In 2004, a CH-53 helicopter crashed Okinawa International University, luckily with no casualties. Today, Okinawa issue became very complicated. In order to close the Phutema base, the dangerous base, the two governments decided to move 8,000 Marines to Guam and to relocate Phutema base to辺野古area in Nago City, the northern area in Okinawa. As you know, the current plan is to construct a V-shaped runway with reclamation of the ocean. However, Okinawan people have been against the construction of the base as they don't want to suffer from many problems such as accidents, crimes, and human rights violations. In addition, the sea area construction site, which is planned to be reclaimed, is covered by beautiful coral cradle of marine lives. Isn't it cute? I like it. And where is the habitat of the endangered species? Named after a dugong. When I read it in my student, I said always a dugong, but nobody understood it. Then I had to explain what is this? Then I said like a cousin of maybe manatee in Florida, and maybe the American people. That's dugong. Live there. So immediately after the new base construction plan came out, Okinawa people started to oppose it. They have continued 24/7 sitting protests on the site for more than 10 years. On the protest, policemen are trying to move the protesters from the site. Some people are arrested. One leader of the protesters was detained for several months and actually indicted, prosecuted to the court. Now the case is in court. The Okinawa Governor Onaga and Nago City Mayor Inamine are both strongly opposed to the plan. Almost for a decade, candidates who favored the relocation plan could not win at the major national election. In April this year, Japanese government finally started the land reclamation on the shore of the辺野古area. Persistent resistance from Okinawans is strengthening with more legal action being taken by Governor Nago to stop the construction. Many people in the United States might think, oh, already the construction started, so maybe there's no way to stop it. Actually, now it is still in the phase of the bank protection works. It is before the phase to drop a lot of concrete into the ocean. So it is said that substantial reclamation will start in 1.5 years. That is my explanation of the background of the issue. Then from now, Mr. Yara will give you our proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming today. My name is Yara. I just arrived from Okinawa yesterday. Jet lag. Terrible, you know? Okay. So please stay and be patient with my jet lag speaking. So, well, I'd like to present you a recommendation on an alternative to辺野古. As you know, in 1996, Japan and the United States agreed to return U.S. Marine Corps Air Station Steamer and build replacement facility off the shore of辺野古, Nago City. After more than 20 years passed, the steamer replacement facility is not yet built because of local people's opposition, as Alta-san presented. Our recommendations include: 1, we propose to make minor change in the U.S. force realignment agreed between Japan-U.S. government in 2012 and move the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, 31st MU, out of Okinawa. And as a result of that, the steamer replacement facility would not be needed because it is 31st MU uses steamer. When that unit should go out of Okinawa, steamer will be returned to local without any replacement. Second, we introduce a new concept of cooperation between U.S. Marine Corps and Japanese Self-Defense Forces, Japan-U.S. Joint MU for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. The third, we recommend that the Japanese government provide a high-speed vessel to 31st MU as connector to distant location in the Asia Pacific, and Japan would consider to continue host nation support at the place where the 31st MU would be relocated from Okinawa. Fourth, Okinawa can provide venues for international coordination for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the Asia Pacific. Okinawa will act as a center for soft power, not a fortress left over from the Cold War. Currently, Okinawa is the base for all four bases: the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. The biggest force in Okinawa is Marine, which alone occupies 75% of the bases within Okinawa and account for 60% of total forces stationed in the island. As you can see in the slide, did you explain this? Yeah, okay, good. So, well, as Saruta-san says, the orange shaded area is all occupied by Marines, and is it the purple? Purple is Air Force, and the small, it's an Army, and what? That's the Navy. So as you know, the massive most of the bases are occupied by Marines. Many problems have resulted from the situation of the disproportionate U.S. military presence, especially the U.S. Marines in Okinawa, traffic accident, crime, noise, and many other social problems as a result. Japan and the U.S. government decided to reduce footprint on Okinawa under the Defense Posture Review, known as the U.S. military realignment under the agreement. The Marine troops in Okinawa would be reduced to almost a half, down to 10,000 from 19,000. The most surprising move is the relocation of 4th Marine Regiment to Guam and 12th Marine Regiment to Hawaii. Those are the only Marine regiment placed at Okinawa. What would remain in Okinawa would be only the commanding element of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, the PRIMEF, and the smallest air ground task force, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, 31st MU. With that realignment, the Marines' ground combat element will be scaled down to 1/4 of the current level. The MU is smallest task force unit keeps U.S. presence at responsible regions and keeps training with the Allied forces. Their missions are limited to preventive and persistent engagement such as non-combatant evacuation operation, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and others. The unit made up of about 2,000 Marines, composed of only 800 to 1,000 Marines of landing battalion, 500 Marines of aviation unit, and 300 Marines of logistic troops. That small task force is mainly designed for peacetime operation. The 31st MU travel around the Pacific for more than 6 months per year on amphibious ships assigned to Sasebo Naval Port in Nagasaki Prefecture in Kyushu, southern part of mainland Japan. So there are no ships in Okinawa to carry Marines for missions. They have to wait the ships coming from Nagasaki to operate. They visit allied countries and actively engage in international joint training focused on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Marine uses Okinawa as a rendezvous point to marry ships from Sasebo in Nagasaki with a new component element deployed from the continental United States. Thus, this rendezvous point does not necessarily need to be in Okinawa, but could be anywhere in mainland Japan if they were welcome. But Japanese people do not want to host U.S. Marines. Okinawa military base issue is a typical example of NIMBY problem. Our recommendation is to move the 31st MIL to Guam or Australia or even to Hawaii. It could also stay in California because all the component elements are sent to Okinawa for 6-month deployment rotation from the U.S. mainland. They can make a Pacific tour from anywhere they can get the boat. With that simple alternative, the Phutema issue can be solved after 20 years. Many bases will be returned to local, and the U.S. military base issue in Okinawa will be greatly alleviated. We propose Japan-U.S. Joint New Four-Partner, HADR, that stands for Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief. The picture on the slide is activities of the 31st MIL from Okinawa participating in Balikatan 2013. That's international joint training in the Philippines. The Marines are carrying not rifles, but shovels, as you can see in the picture. They are repairing the floor of a school room in a rural area. The playground became muddy after every rain. The Marines were making a concrete floor as a part of humanitarian assistance project. They also provide medical care to local residents. According to the Marine strategic doctrine, this kind of humanitarian assistance could draw local people's mind away from terrorist propaganda. They call these soft power activities a kind of war on terror or war on ideology. The MIL Marine Expeditionary Unit also leads international training designed to cope with natural disaster. During Balikatan 2013, 11 nations military forces participated in disaster relief desktop exercise. There were Japanese self-defense forces, Australian, Vietnamese, and Indonesian troops. And in addition, the Chinese sent commanding element for the exercise. It was the first time the China participated in an international exercise in the Asia Pacific. The following year, the Chinese People's Liberation Army sent land troops to Cobra Bowl 2014 in Thailand. Chinese former Army General Si Kuan-Yi commented that Chinese participation is a declaration of commitment to a better security environment in the Asia Pacific in cooperation with the United States. This year, in Cobra Bowl 2017, China and India military cooperated in building new school room at elementary school in rural area of Thailand. This type of international training has become more popular now, and many nations are participating and anticipated to join. Through this joint training, focused on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, Asian nations can seek a better security environment. U.S. military play important role in creating harmonious collaboration among the Indo-Asia Pacific nations. Today's security issues are symbolized with two tragic events: 9/11 terrorist attack at New York and March 11 devastating earthquake in northern part of Japan. According to the World Bank, natural disaster affect 16 million people and caused $4.5 billion of damage in the Asia Pacific from 1980 to 2011. According to the United Nations, the chance of a natural disaster occurring in the Asia Pacific is 3.2 times greater than in Africa, 5.5 times greater than in Central America, 9 times greater than in North America, and 67 times greater than in Europe. The only 4 nations can sufficiently conduct disaster relief operation in Pacific: US, China, Japan, and Australia. We need a cooperation in Asia. We believe that the conception of a Japan and US joint view can meet the most urgent need of Asian Pacific security. To support the activities of joint view, we propose that the Japanese government provide a high-speed vessel to 31st View. The annual lease cost of that kind of vessels in Japan is $9 million. To build a new one would cost $45 million. We also propose that the Japanese government provide financial assistance to the 31st View for facility development at the place where the 31st View will relocate its bases from Okinawa. Total host nation support by Japan was $3.3 billion in fiscal year 2016. Of that, $193 million was allocated to the facility improvement program, equivalent to the military construction budget or MILCOM. Marine bases in Okinawa were given about $26 million, so 31st View get $9 million for high-speed vessel and $26 million for MILCOM, makes $35 million every year. Current government plan of thermal replacement facility cost $3 billion for landfill, and total cost is estimated close to $10 billion. We recommend revision of the U.S. military force realignment that moves the 31st View out of Okinawa. It requires minor change in the force realignment. We propose establishment of a Japan-U.S. joint view for harbor. We propose that the Japanese government support the 31st View to move the new location by providing high-speed vessel and facility improvement funds. Those recommendations will save billions of dollars and save the beautiful coral sea at辺野古, which is inhabited by the dugong. Our recommendation of a joint view for harbor aim to create a platform for security cooperation among Asia-Pacific countries, including China. Japan will be able to join security maintenance activities in a peaceful manner. Our recommendation not only to solve the U.S. military base issue in Okinawa, but also provide new visions for a 21st century security network. Thank you very much.
はい。私は主に首都圏で発行されている東京新聞の論説委員を務めています半田茂と言います。
Good afternoon. My name is Shigeru Handa. I am an editorial writer for the Tokyo Shimbun newspaper that primarily circulates in the Tokyo metropolitan area.
長年安全保障問題に取り組んできました。
And I have been involved in security issues for many years.
本日は抑止力の観点から沖縄の海兵隊のうち実戦部隊が移転可能である理由について話をします。
And I am here today to talk about how it is possible to relocate the combat element of the Marines stationed in Okinawa from a deterrence perspective.
これまで日本政府は沖縄の海兵隊を含む米軍について 抑止力の面で必要性を強調してきました。
Up until now, the Japanese government position as far as the Marines in Okinawa has been that the U.S. military presence, including the Marines in Okinawa, was necessary for deterrence.
沖縄は中国や朝鮮半島に近く、西太平洋の鍵となる場所にあるので、米海兵隊の駐留が抑止力になるというのです。
So their position has been that given that Okinawa is located close to China and the Korean Peninsula, it is a strategic location key to the West Pacific, and therefore having the presence of the U.S. Marines in Okinawa would serve as deterrence.
沖縄にはアジア最大の航空基地である米空軍嘉手納基地があるほか、海外では唯一米海兵隊の遠征軍が置かれ、その配下に旅団や連隊、遠征隊があります。
So in Okinawa, there's not only the U.S. Air Force Kadena Air Base, which is the largest air base in Asia. There is the only Marine Expeditionary Force that is located outside of the United States. And under the Marine Expeditionary Force, you have a brigade and a regiment and a Marine Expedition Unit.
あまりに多くの米軍基地が沖縄にあることから、日米両政府は2006年、過重な基地負担を軽減するため、米軍基地の整理統合縮小で合意しました。
Given the numerous U.S. military bases that exist in Okinawa in 2006, in order to lay some of the burden on the island of Okinawa due to the presence of these military bases, both governments, the U.S. and Japanese government, agreed to reorganize, restructure, integrate, and reduce U.S. military bases in Okinawa.
海兵隊1万8000人のうち8000人をグアム島へ移転することにしたのです。
So a decision was taken to move 8,000 of the 18,000 Marines to Guam.
移転するのが司令部とその要因だったので、沖縄の人々から事件事故を起こすことが多い実戦部隊を移転させてほしいと移転の中身を変更するよう求める声が上がりました。
So members to be relocating outside of Okinawa were to be the command element as well as their staff. And for this reason, people of Okinawa said that they wanted to see the combat troops move outside of Okinawa because these individuals were more likely to be associated with incidents and accidents.
しかし日本政府は実戦部隊が海外へ移転すると抑止力が低下するとしてこの要求を拒みました。
But this demand was rejected by the Japanese government, and the reason for that was to say that if we were to move the combat element overseas, that would undermine deterrence.
やがて驚くべきことが起こりました。
And in due course, something surprising occurred.
6年後の2012年になって米政府から移転の中身を入れ替えたいとの提案がありました。
6 years later, in 2012, a request was made by the U.S. government to make a change to what constitutes this relocation.
移転するのは司令部とその要員ではなく実戦部隊に変更されたのです。
In other words, what happened was the people who will be relocating overseas would not be the command element and its staff, but it would be the combat element.
国防予算の削減により部隊配備や兵員削減を余儀なくされた米政府の都合からの要請でした。
And this request from the U.S. government stemmed from the fact that they were in the process of cutting their defense spending, and they were forced to reduce troop deployment as well as the number of troops.
これに日本政府は同意しましたが、あれほど強調した抑止力については何の説明もありませんでした。
So the Japanese government agreed to grant this request, and yet they gave no explanation whatsoever as far as what would happen to deterrence, which appeared to had been a very big issue for them.
日米両政府が軍事力を強める中国や核・ミサイル開発を進める北朝鮮を無視するはずがありません。
Certainly, it would never be the case that the U.S. government or the Japanese government, for that matter, would disregard the emerging military power of China or the North Korea with its nuclear missile program.
実戦部隊が海外へ移転したとしても、抑止力は変化しないと考えたか、最初から抑止力という言葉は沖縄の人々を説得するための嘘だったかの、どちらかでしょう。
So this would lead me to believe that it would be either one of the two. The Japanese government considered that there would be no effect on deterrence, even if the combat element was to relocate overseas, or they used the term deterrence from the very beginning in order to persuade the people of Okinawa that this was a lie that they used to persuade the people.
日本政府が抑止力について真剣に考えているならば、米国とソ連が対立した冷戦最中の1970年代にソ連に一番近い北海道から2万人もいた米陸軍が撤収するのを引き止めもせず認めたことの理由がつきません。
Now, if the Japanese government is serious about deterrence, how would one explain it's not getting any pushback when 20,000 U.S. Army troops left the island of Hokkaido in the 1970s, in the midst of the Cold War with the Soviet Union, when Hokkaido is very close to the Soviet Union, or was close to the Soviet Union.
結局、日本政府の言う抑止力とは、日本政府が米政府の要求を実現するために使う方便なのではないかと疑っています。
In other words, I suspect that when the Japanese government speaks of deterrence, it's using it merely as an excuse to grant the wishes or requests made by the U.S. government.
先に述べた通り、2012年に日米両政府で再び合意した結果、沖縄に残る実戦部隊は第31海兵遠征隊の兵員2000人だけとなります。
As I stated earlier, based on the 2012 agreement reached by the two governments, the Marines that would remain in Okinawa would be the operational element of the 31st NEU, and that translates into 2,000 troops.
日本政府と沖縄県が鋭く対立する辺野古新基地は彼らが使う基地なのです。
So this new辺野古base, where there's much conflict between the Japanese government and the prefecture of Okinawa, is to be used by these 2,000 troops.
たった2000人のために沖縄のきれいな海を埋め立て、ジュゴンなどさまざまな絶滅危惧種の生息場所を奪うのは許されることではありません。
So what we're talking about here is reclaiming the land and reclaiming the beautiful waters of Okinawa and depriving many endangered species, including the dugong or the saltwater manatee, of their habitats, and this should not be allowed. Right, and that will be only to accommodate the 2,000 Marines.
だからといって市街地のど真ん中にあり、米軍の安全基準では一日の利用も許されない普天間基地をそのままにすることも許されることではありません。
And that said, we cannot allow the continued operation of the Phtenma Air Base, which is located in the midst of a densely populated area, that would not be allowed to be operated if the U.S. military safety standards were to be used. It would not be allowed to operate even for a day.
私は抑止力について考えてみました。
So I have thought about deterrence.
日米両政府が海兵隊の海外移転で最初に合意した2006年当時と現在を比べ大きく変化したことがあります。
If you look at the situation today and compare it to how things were back in 2006 when the U.S. government and the Japanese government entered into this agreement about relocating the Marines, there's one thing that has changed in a quite significant way.
日本政府は日本全体の安全保障体制を見直し、自衛隊の中に海兵隊と同じ組織を新規編成することにしたのです。
The Japanese government reviewed its overall security system, and it has decided to create a marine-like entity within the self-defense forces.
その名称は陸上自衛隊水陸機動団といいます。
So this entity will be called the Ground Self-Defense Force Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade.
水陸機動団は沖縄から450マイル離れた九州の長崎県佐世保市に来年3月、発足します。
So this Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade will be established in March of next year in the city of Sasebo in Nagasaki Prefecture in the island of Kyushu, 450 miles from Okinawa.
海兵隊と同じように艦艇や航空機で移動し、敵前上陸をして戦う任務を持つことになります。
So this Rapid Deployment Brigade would be transported by vessels and aircraft, just like the Marines, to fight the enemy on the ground.
すでに米政府から水陸両用車 AAV7 を52両、垂直離着陸機オスプレイを17機購入することが決まっています。
A decision has already been taken to purchase 52 amphibious vehicle AAV7s and 17 vertical takeoff and landing Ospreys.
水陸機動団の人員は3000名で、沖縄に残る第31海兵遠征隊より1000人多いのです。
So the number of this rapid deployment brigade will total 3,000, which means there will be 1,000 more than the troops that will remain from the 31st MEU.
沖縄の自衛隊も近年大きく変化しました。
And the self-defense forces in Okinawa has gone through much change as well.
県庁所在地の那覇市にいる陸上自衛隊は2010年に第一混成団から第15旅団へと格上げされ、人員が増えました。
So the SDF located in the prefectural capital city of Naha in Okinawa was upgraded in 2010 from the 1st Combined Brigade to the 15th Brigade.
装甲車や多くの武器類が配備され、戦闘力が強化されました。
They are equipped with armored vehicles and various weapons, and their combat capabilities have been boosted.
また、那覇基地の航空自衛隊には2016年、米空軍も使っている F-15 戦闘機が追加されて約40機となり、1個飛行隊が2個飛行隊に倍増しました。
And the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, located in Naha, the Naha base, in 2016 added some F-15 fighter aircraft, and their total number of bombers is about 40, and the number of squadrons doubled to 2.
海上自衛隊は P3C 哨戒機約10機のほか、掃海艇2隻を配備しています。
And the Marine Self-Defense Force has 10 P3C patrol aircraft, as well as 2 minesweepers.
自衛隊の地対空ミサイル部隊は8個部隊あり、沖縄の人々を守ると同時に米軍基地の防衛に貢献しています。
The SDF currently has 8 surface-to-air missile units, and they not only provide a defense to the people of Okinawa, but contributes to protecting U.S. military bases there.
日本には47の都道府県がありますが、陸海空の3自衛隊が揃い、これほど強力な抑止力を備えた地域は他にありません。
So in Japan, there are 47 prefectures and administrative districts, and there's no other region in our country that has a type of deterrence that Okinawa has with all three services being present there.
自衛隊の強化により、海兵隊の第31海兵遠征隊が沖縄に残る理由は小さくなっているのではないでしょうか。
But beefing up of the SDF power to strike, wouldn't it be fair to say that there's a less of a reason for the 31st MEU to remain in Okinawa?
私たちは第3海兵遠征軍の司令部や補給部隊が沖縄から出ていくことは求めていません。
And we are not calling for the 3rd MEF, the Maritime Expeditionary Force, its command element and the supply element to leave Okinawa.
実戦部隊の全面移転を主張しているのです。
What we're asking for is the total relocation and removal of combat troops from Okinawa.
辺野古に新しい基地を作らなければ、沖縄の人々の怒りは収まり、沖縄の米軍基地を安定的に存続させることにつながります。
If a new base is not constructed in Handle, it will placate the people of Okinawa and will lead to stable continued presence of U.S. bases in Okinawa.
日米両国のより良い関係が穏やかに長続きするための最善の解決策が本日の提言だと確信しています。
And I firmly believe my proposal today is the best solution to ensure better relations between our two countries without controversy for many years to come.
ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we turn up to our peanut batter, as it were. Thank you, Mr. Zuki.
Well, thank you very much, Satu, and thank you for hosting this very important panel discussion. I want to congratulate my good friends, Ms. Sarita, Mr. Yara, and Mr. Honda, for writing a terrific report. I know that you have been working hard over the last 2 years to put this together, and it's really gratifying to see the fruits of this labor. As you know, I've been advocating for quite some time that it's very important to open up the debate in Japan to hear other voices than the voices that are represented by the Japanese government on the Okinawa issue, and that seriously considers the security requirements in the region. And I think you've definitely made a contribution to opening up that debate. Now, as I see this report, I think this report will be received warmly in Okinawa, as it should be. But I think the main target audience of this report ought to be the Japanese security policy community and the U.S. policy community, because it's the people who inhabit those two communities that will ultimately decide whether or not to go ahead with the current relocation plan. And so what I would like to offer today, although I'm quite sympathetic to much of the report, I wanted to provide a friendly critique taking into account what I see as some of the questions that are bound to emerge from members of the U.S. and Japanese security policy community. And I want to focus my remarks on 3 issues. One is the issue that Mr. Honda gave a penetrating analysis of, which is the issue of deterrence, and then also the flip side of deterrence, the issue of crisis response. And then secondly, focus on the matter of alternatives, the alternative that Mr. Yara proposed, and then finally get to the politics of this issue, which Sarada-san talked about at the beginning. First, on the issue of deterrence, I agree very much with Mr. Honda that there has been a misapplication or misuse of the concept of deterrence, an uncritical, expansive application of that notion that defies much of the academic literature on deterrence studies in the United States and abroad. And one of the things I think is really important to do is to really unpack the scenarios, the things that we are trying to deter, rather than just talk about deterrence in a blanket sense, to really look at the feasible, possible scenarios in which we have to try to avoid through deterrence. And here is really a pretty finite list of issues. One is Korea. Second is a possible contingency regarding Taiwan. Third might be contingencies related to maritime territorial disputes, and for Japan especially, the Senkaku issue in the East China Sea, and then also in the South China Sea. And I think Mr. Yara is quite right to focus on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief because it's more likely that those will be the major missions. But still, if you are a military planner in Japan or in the United States, you have to worry about worst case scenarios. And unless you take that into account, it's hard to then, I think, move towards an alternative course. And so, first, if one looks at the Korea situation, it's often said that the Phutema Marine Air Station is essential for deterrence and crisis response during Korean contingency because Okinawa is close by. And if one looks at the map, nothing could be further from the truth. If one looks at the 1950 Korean War and the counter-offensive that the U.S.-led UN forces launched against North Korea, it did not happen from Okinawa, but from Kyushu. So if one was thinking about a crisis response in Korea, and one should think about that given the tensions that we have on the Korean Peninsula today, the ideal spot for a staging area for counteroffensive would not be Okinawa, but would probably be in Kyushu. Now, some of the leaked war plans that have been talked about have highlighted the role of Phutema as a staging area. But if you're a military planner, you have to use the facilities that you have on hand in coming up with war plans. But it seems to me that that is a suboptimal war plan. And our war plan really should be adjusted by having forces elsewhere. Secondly, in terms of Taiwan, it is hard for me to imagine how a 31st MU is really going to play a key role in deterrence and crisis response on a Taiwan issue, which is a fundamental core issue for China. A Taiwan crisis has a real danger of reaching the highest levels of military conflict. And here, in order for deterrence, I think the key forces that the United States has is that of the Air Force and the naval forces, and it's not the Marine Corps. And then finally, in terms of the Senkaku issue, here, I would agree with Mr. Honda that the most credible deterrence that could be placed against possible Chinese aggression against the Senkakus would be Japan's own deterrence capability. And I'm glad that Japan is investing in those resources. Now, one caveat in this is looking at it from the Chinese point of view. The last thing China would want to engage would be American Marine Corps units over a Senkaku dispute. So in that sense, it is possible to argue that having the capability under certain circumstances for Marine Corps to rapidly deploy to Okinawa might be essential. And so therefore, it might be necessary to have some kind of facility to receive U.S. Marine Corps units. Moving on to the alternative issue, I think if one focuses, like Mr. Yada did, on the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, I think the proposal that they make makes a great deal of sense. But given the uncertainties over traditional, not non-traditional, but traditional security issues, I'm not convinced that having a complete departure of the Marine Corps, except for logistic and command units, necessarily makes the most sense, or it's definitely not going to be persuasive to the U.S. and Japanese security policy community. And therefore, as an alternative to their alternative, I propose that there be an effort to beef up the capabilities at Iwakuni, to develop access to U.S. Marine Corps forces to some facility in Kyushu that is close to Sasebo. The U.S. Marine Corps combat units are not just the MU, but there are 3 other MUs on the West Coast. And there should be a infrastructure that would allow the rapid deployment or even the rotational deployment of those units from the continent of the United States. But one thing is clear, that the辺野古facility, the replacement facility, is inadequate to meet the critical requirements under a military contingency. The General Accounting Office report reminded the policy community of that. The top U.S. Marine military officials have indicated that. And so it's certain that even if辺野古is built, in order to meet the critical operational requirements during a crisis, there needs to be an alternative. And I propose that one look at an alternative in Kyushu. Finally, going to the issue of politics. One point is about the politics in Okinawa. Now, I have often asserted that if the U.S. and Japanese government stubbornly continues to pursue the construction of the 2 runways on the landfill off of辺野古, that this will so anger the Okinawa population that their willingness to even host other facilities, and the most important facility that the United States has, Kadena, would be in doubt. Now, I have made that point based upon my own understanding of the politics in Okinawa, but I think that that will be the critical issue that might move American policymakers. So I would want to know from our friends here to what extent they have evidence that if the U.S. and Japanese government continue to pursue the辺野古option, that the anger in Okinawa will increase so much that their willingness to host even Kadena would be in jeopardy. The second political issue relates to the U.S., Japan, Okinawa triangle. I don't know what Prime Minister Abe's own views on this. I'm not sure he's really looked at this carefully. But one thing he knows for sure is that if a Japanese Prime Minister were to question this agreement between the United States and Japan, then there might be a huge diplomatic and political price to be paid. And if you look at what happened to the Hatayama government, I think it's understandable that Prime Minister Abe would not want to propose an alternate plan at this moment. But at the same time, as long as Prime Minister Abe is continuing to say that he is committed to this plan and he is going to move forward on this plan, it's hard to imagine the U.S. government then saying, well, we've changed our minds. And so the big question is, how do you break politically this stalemate? And I think one of the keys to this is how much willingness is there in Okinawa to compromise. I can imagine that most Okinawans would support the plan that the new diplomacy initiative has put forward. But I feel that that plan may be too high of a bar for the Japanese security and U.S. security policy communities to accept. And so one critical issue is there a range of compromise solutions that would be possible so that it will be a win for Okinawa as well as a win for the Japanese and U.S. security policy communities. And so with that, I'll stop.
Terrific. Thank you all for your presentations. I really appreciate our NDI colleagues as well as Mike for making those very useful remarks. We have just a little over 30 minutes for our Q&A. For those who came in at the end, just a reminder that we are on the record and the event is being podcast live so that you are aware of that for the question and answer and discussion period. Who'd like to kick us off? I would just ask that you introduce yourself and your affiliation so you know, so our guests can. Yes, sir, in the back, please.
Hi, my name is Nico Hahn. And I have a physical question. Have you presented this already to anyone in the Japanese or U.S. government?
I have.
And if so, who and what it would say? And if not, do you have some plans?
Did you hear the question? The question for all was from our colleague at GD Press, whether this report had been presented by our colleagues to either the U.S. or Japanese governments, and their response if presented. Would you like to respond? Do you understand, or sorry for something? Yeah.
Very good question, and also substantial thing we have to do is to give this proposal to the two governments. I understand. Having said that, actually we haven't yet proposed this to the two governments. In the United States, we just came here yesterday, and if there is a chance, we would like to do it. Then also in Japan, we have an embassy, also in Okinawa, we have a consulate there, so we will try to submit this paper to the U.S. government itself in near future. We will definitely try to do it. And also we met some congressmen and senators and the staffers, and senator representatives themselves and also staffers. So we discussed with this proposal with them. And also about the Japanese government, we will try to do so as well. But one of the authors of this report from the government, a former government official, Mr. Yanagisawa, who was in a very high position in the government, almost the top of the defense department. Then he left the government and who joined the diplomacy initiative, and he actually led this project. Then his idea is maybe, of course, we can go there to propose this report to the government itself, the government of Japan itself. However, maybe the best way to change the atmosphere in Japan is maybe to use the symposium opportunity like this in Tokyo or in Okinawa or elsewhere in Japan and try to change the social atmosphere. Maybe the government doesn't hear the voices directly from us. So that's a saying from the former high-rank official of the government. So we thought maybe, in future we will also try to go to the government to present this. However, now we try to have a lot of symposium or try to give a speech or talk at the TV program or radio program, whatever we can. So that's phase right now in Japan. But I promise that in future we will submit that to the Japanese government as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, please. Mark Harrison from Ann Methodist Church. Now that really confused me. The answer. It seems to me that you would have taken this report to the people of Okinawa. So what do the people of Okinawa think of this proposal? And what group has to talk to? I mean, it's not a think tank proposal, because I know, say, you're an activist. So that you had to take it out to the Okinawa people to see what they think. Institutions of Okinawa. Have they brought into this? I know you had the mayor who's been here before, Okinawa, and he's been former mayor. So if he been, what have they said? You had an election and you had what do y'all call the prefecture? The governor. The governor's opposed to this. All right, so are they invested in this as well? Yes. Have they been involved in this? I guess I just want to get that straight. And lastly, just very quickly, Do people continuously vote against this? And why does the government keep going forward? Because I think the point that gets made is there going to be an uprising by Okinawan people? That's the question.
I will just like to respond because maybe you can answer to the second part. Yes, the first symposium we had about these proposals in Tokyo, then we got a very good audience, including the thousands tribes from the United States. Then they wrote a very long article about this proposal. That was actually a very good article, more than Okinawa. Then second symposium we had was in Okinawa. And then again, a lot of people came to the symposium. So many people were standing, and we prepared a lot of copies of the report, but we exhausted everything. Then one day after, the newspaper put a lot of article about this symposium. Then also they put the editorial about this proposal, saying that, oh, okay, now is maybe the time to propose a concrete idea, a concrete option, not only just opposing, but also to propose one concrete option, which could be, Mike said it cannot be taken by the two governments, but it's much more concrete than ever from the perspective of the people who are opposing the base. So, yes, the Okinawan people accept, not everybody. Some people say, why do you have to study about the defense policy? So we just visit the war defense. There are some people who say, I understand their feeling as well, but we would like to propose a very concrete option. So the Okinawan people, generally speaking, including the two large newspapers, local newspapers in Okinawa, accept this option. That is an answer to the first part of your question. And the second one was
about this. No. She answered.
Yes, so the question about
Why Japan is not a democratic country? Is that true? Well, that's a very big question. I cannot answer
Based off his question,
uprising?
yeah, you all keep, this keeps coming and coming back.
Right.
You let the governor, you let the mayor, and why?
That's also my question too. I just like to know the answers, Well, the situation, I think it's getting worse and worse. As Mochi Zuki-san pointed out, it's going to affect Kadena too. Well, just 2 weeks ago, I have a symposium in Okinawa about similar issue. And people are saying that we have to target Kadena. And it's already starting. Some people are making some demonstration every Friday at every gate of the Kadena. They block the traffic. So it's going to affect, I'm sure, in the future. Then, well, it is maybe time to think about the little 31st new opening. Then I'm not sure what's going to happen. In Japan, they may, what I mean they is the central government of Japan may still push the construction of Henoko landfill. Then, well, I'm not here. Well, it's been like this for how many decades? After the war. As Sato-san explained it to you, it was mainland hosted Marine Corps first. But since people around the bases surrounding Marine Corps base opposed and protested very severely, very hardly in mainland, then U.S. and Japanese government agreed to move Marine Corps from mainland to Okinawa. Well, the initial purpose of Marine station in Japan is to watch the North Korea. It was right after the Korean Peninsula, Korean War. So there's no military reason to move Marines from mainland to Okinawa, because Okinawa is farther from Korea Peninsula, and there's no ships, and there's no air cargo, no transport for Marine to deploy from Okinawa to Korea Peninsula in time of need. So we have no idea at all why. It is all political decision. Now politics, it seems to me that the central government will not give any second thought to stop. I mean, the Handle. Then I don't know what's going to happen next. Among the local people, it's getting worse, I guess. Since, imagine even the governor and the city mayor are against it, that both U.S. and Japanese government are pushing this construction. When we talk with the U.S. Government people, they would say this issue is you have to go to Japanese government, because Japanese government is the one who provide the facility for the U.S. military. The Japanese government, when we start talking with the Japanese government, they will say, we cannot talk about the U.S. military operations. So who are we going to talk to? There's no people have quite responsible say. That's very complicated. And I feel very, I thank you pointing out this democracy of Japan, but well, we need to develop more in the time of 21st century. Sorry.
I'm Kathleen Mystery, and I have a private firm for international research and called Mystery Advisors, and so I'm thinking money. I've lived in many cities in the United States, and unfortunately I've lived in many cities where our bases and military installations were closed. This is very sad for the local economy and local business people. Is in your plan, do you offer any retraining programs or any other types of ideas where the people who are left behind, who have the ancillary properties and ancillary dry cleaners, groceries, the different stores, to help them start new things so they can then still prosper and feed their families and educate their children?
Please, why don't you start and then we'll have
Okay. Well, I raised my hand simply because there is a myth out there that the Okinawan economy is so dependent upon the U.S. military presence that there is a drawdown, especially in the Marine Corps. This will have a major negative effect on the Okinawan economy. And that's pretty much a myth. And in fact, at George Washington University, we hosted a symposium with Governor Onaga, and then an advisor to Governor Onaga, Professor Tomikawa, who is now the Vice Governor of Okinawa, and has studied this issue. And he has argued that rather than the military presence supporting the Okinawan economy, it has now become more of an obstacle to further development of the Okinawan economy. And if you look at the map of where the marine installations are at, they're right in the center of Okinawa, and in some of the areas it's very choice real estate. If those facilities were removed, it would open the way for really good development of Okinawa, and the Okinawan economy really depends much more on tourism and new industrial opportunities. And so it's not the same situation as it is in the United States.
we haven't talked about the economic aspect now this in this project because I think we are so much packed with this marine things, and also we are not good in counting money. It's having a hard time using money myself. I mean, life, you know, my lack of money. So, well, but what Mike says is true, I guess. It's well, according to the Okinawan prefecture government counting, it's consists about less than 5% within GDP of Okinawa prefecture. Yeah, it's not so big now. We have 9,000 people working in a basis. It's big. This big number is big, but we have a 630,000 working force in Okinawa.
I haven't been there yet.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Akira Kamago. I'm an intern at the Society for International Law. Every time I go to Okinawa, I hear about the news about people, young women getting sexually assaulted and raped or killed by certain Korean men and women. And I'm just wondering, in order, if this, if this kind of this proposal is to establish more of a democracy and equity for the people of Okinawa, I'm just wondering if we have considered the status of forces agreement, which you took it as a way to, because that agreement is effectively giving certain laws and rights to certain military members that are that might end up becoming illegal or unjust because they allow for example, flagging under the age of 18, for example, and 20, and there's certain regulations and laws that allow for certain Americans to be able to take advantage of these loopholes throughout the government. So I'm just wondering if your proposal, or if you have considered maybe even revising that or kind of having a discussion about potentially allowing for these changes to happen to perhaps make a more equitable state for it.
日本とアメリカはアメリカが他に基地を置いている他国と同じように日米地位協定を持っているのは今のご指摘のとおりです。
As you pointed out, certainly Japan has this status of forces agreement with the United States, just like any other country that hosts U.S. military.
一番の問題は第一次裁判権をアメリカ政府側が持っていて、犯罪を犯したアメリカの兵士に対して日本が直接の裁判権を持っていないということ。
So the real issue here is that the first that belongs with the United States. So if a criminal is found, that the jurisdiction would belong to the United States.
もちろん不平等、問題が多いです。
And certainly it's not equitable in there are many issues.
しかしながら、日本政府がこれを改定をすると、米軍を受け入れている他国にも影響が出てくる。
But if the Japanese government asks to revise this agreement, that would have an impact on all countries where the United States would have relationship.
したがって今の段階で日本政府は弾力的な運用をするというところにとどまっている。
So the current status is that the Japanese government is dealing with the situation very elastically.
しかしながら、例えばアメリカの兵士が日本に来た場合に入国審査をしない、そして、関税もかからないし、 あと、まあ、要するにフリーに行ったり来たりして。
So we do see American soldiers who come to Japan who don't have to go through passport control, and they're exempt from duties. So there's free movement of American troops.
したがって、今アメリカ兵が日本に何人いるかさえ日本政府は正確に把握していません。
So the Japanese government, in fact, does not have an understanding of how many American soldiers actually reside or stay in Japan. They don't have an exact figure.
本来は主権国家として、このようなことは許されない。
And as a sovereign nation, this really shouldn't be the case.
ですから本来はあなたが言うように地位協定を平等で対等な国同士の約束ごとに変える必要がある。
So ideally, I'm with you. This status of forces agreement should be equitable, and it should be an equal arrangement.
これは日本政府の問題でもあるし、また我々日本国民が日本政府に強く求めていくという。我々国民の問題がある。これがちゃんと解決しなければ、お互いがちゃんとしなければ、問題は終わらないと思います。
So this is an issue that the Japanese government needs to take up, and it's also something that the people of Japan needs to demand. And with those two parties not getting engaged, this is not going to be resolved.
Yeah, we haven't discussed in this detail yet, but we have just presented the idea. Well, actually, there are some joint training already based on this humanitarian system, and this is really according to the scenario of this HADR. Well, what we are saying is that we have why not we gonna focus on in this area of cooperation between the U.S. and Japan, since as we see the situation of Asia Pacific, well, I should include India too, Indo-Asia Pacific. Certainly there are some threat and some traditional security, worry problem, but yet, well, what we see the mission of new daily basis, they are very much busy with doing training with Asian nation military forces in this harder area. So our idea still is the idea. Why not take more part, take more effort in this area? I mean, Japanese side, pour more budget, pour more people into this area, so that we can foresee the better platform for the security in Asia. I'm sorry, but I cannot give you a concrete idea, but concrete detail. But
This is the vision.
今、日米の間で共同訓練をする場合にはバイラテラルな関係ですね、つまりアメリカはアメリカ、日本は日本で、指揮統制というのはないわけですね。連絡調整があるわけです。
As you pointed out, when we have bilateral exercises between the two countries, when it comes to command and control, they are separate. So there's communication coordination between the two tools.
これを完全な共同部隊にするか、それとも指揮権は別々にするかというのはこれから考えるべきなんだと思います。
Whether this should be a combined unit where we share command and control, or whether it would be whether command and control will be separate, would be something that we have to discuss.
Steve Winters, Independent Consultant. I'd like to comment on what seems to me perhaps a problem that could arise with your approach. And that is, if I think back over the last 4 years, I remember Ambassador Fujisaki when he was here, and we had the two negotiations between Japan and the U.S. I remember very briefly, he was up all night. I mean, those negotiations went right down to the wire. And I think he was quite happy with the results. So what I'm saying, and since then, of course, with the Abe administration, we have various initiatives to reinterpret the Constitution or whatever that forces to do. So the point is, if I look over this 4-year period, there have been extremely intense negotiations and pressures from both sides, and fortunately a lot of resolution. But it's extremely complicated situation, very well balanced, on all types of fronts. And this situation with Okinawa has been obviously an element of that whole broader picture. But this broader picture so well fit in like a crossword puzzle. It's very difficult for me, this is why I see the problem, for an initiative coming in on, so to speak, a single issue in this case to Okinawa, to have any effect with something that is so, so intensely solidified and moving forward on that same track.
I'd like to refer to this a little bit too, if I understand your question to see if this will come up. Japanese government is information has been reticent to raise or deviate from this agreement and the level to proceed with it. The part of it raises, so you said, interestingly, you framed the new question in terms of environmental, natural habitat, burden on Okinawa and its people. Pushing a solution to this could also open up a much broader problem of reliance, which has spillover effects that could be much worse for Okinawa. So, in other words, you turn it around. By pushing the solution to Okinawa very quickly or without a lot of good work to get it done for them, it opens up or endangers the ground, which then turns around and has lots of implications for such presence in Okinawa, its own. So I just wondered if something keeps coming up to me.
Well, I agree very much with the question and your comment, Satu. Of course, I think it's really important to listen and be very sensitive to the voices in Okinawa. But at the same time, it's important to keep the big strategic picture in mind. And it's important to remember that the broad outlines of the current policy emerged already in 1996, and then there was a refinement in 2006, and then another one in 2012. But it's essentially a version of the same plan, that it was somewhere there would be a Phuten replacement facility in Oluda Bay. Like, that has not changed. It's just the nature of that project. But the strategic situation has changed enormously over those 20 years. And so I think the only way to get the U.S. and Japanese security policy community to engage this issue as well, keeping in mind the voices and the interests of the Okinawan people, do a comprehensive strategic review that looks at the changes in Korea, the changes in cross-strait relations, the maritime issues, and as a mental exercise, do a zero-based look at this. And if we did that, would we want the same kind of force posture that we have today? And I would say probably not. And I think that's the only way to really move this. But it's also important to always keep the Okinawan voices in mind and at the table on this.
I have one other question. I didn't see a hand, but sorry, I see a hand.
Hi, my name is Julia. I was wondering about
just speak a little louder, please, so that the podcast can.
Okay, one simple question. Mike just mentioned that the key to this issue is possibly the project understanding. So I would like to know where do you stand on the so-called need? Suggesting to do what you need, or not on this issue?
Sakura agreed.
Well, Taco basically is on the same track, right? Mike mentioned it started off from 1996 and 2006 and 2012. It's all on the same track. Yes, our proposal is not ignoring the tackle, but we are trying to give a new picture of solution to or new approach to our issue. Well, as you have to understand that we're not experts, we're not marine folks, so we cannot talk details too much. But at least we can give you give you an idea that maybe some discussion or some issues or new approach we have not been looked at. So I wish this proposal could be some sort of opener to the discussion or to the debate. I'm not answering your question. Sorry,
鎖港そのもの、さっきマイクが言ったように、普天間基地の移設の問題というのは、96年、2006年、2012年というふうに、そのバージョンが変わってきたと。基地だけを見たら、バージョンが変化をしたというふうには言えるとは思うんです。
Sako, as Mike mentioned, I think it's fair to say that the proposal or the program hasn't really changed as far as the Denmark relocation program goes. It was 96, 2006, 2012, and there were different versions. If you're just looking at the base, that would be fair to say.
ただし、2012年のこの米軍再編の見直しというのは、これは基地がどうなるということではなくて、要するに海兵隊の中身が大きく変わったという意味では、今度運用にこの変化が出てきたということになると思います。
That said, the 2012 restructuring of the U.S. military, that has to do with restructuring the Marines. So it was much more than a base issue. So there'll be an operational change encompassed in this.
で、私たち ND のこの提言というのは、まさにその2012年に出てきた運用の変化を捉えて、アメリカ自身が実戦部隊を沖縄に置く必要性というものを自ら極限化してきたということであるならば、そこを捉まえて、この際思い切って実戦部隊の全面移転というものができないかというふうに考えたということです。
So ND looked at what occurred in 2012 because there was this operational change that was envisaged. So our thinking was that the U.S. was looking at minimizing the combat element. Our sense was, can we explore the possibility of total removal of the combat element?
I would agree very much with what Honda-san said about some of those operational changes that took place in 2012. And so there's no question that there's been an adaptation at the tactical, operational level. But what I think is important, given the rise in Chinese military capabilities, the vulnerabilities that U.S. forces have, the fundamentally different situation that we are now faced with regarding the Korean Peninsula and the array of complex maritime security issues that we really need to have a strategic review, not just at the operational or tactical level. And I think no solution will be acceptable unless the strategic community in both the United States and Japan thinks that the new force posture will be more effective and more efficient than the current one. And that's the only way that the policy communities in both Washington and Tokyo will be convinced. And my firm belief is such a solution, strategic solution, would in the end reduce the burden on Okinawa.
Well, I know this discussion could go on, but we're already 6 minutes over time, and I'm very conscious of the time, and I know people have other things to get to. But before I turn to thank the panel and Mike, I just make a program announcement. On July 19th, that's next week, next Wednesday, from 3 to 4:30, sort of obviously not the same issue, but keeping in line with the issue of American military relationships in the region. We have a program on the Philippines with Jay Batang-Bakal, who is the head of the Philippine Center on Maritime Law at the University of the Philippines, and a former visiting fellow here. And he's going to be speaking about the Philippine-U.S. security relationship. So I hope you'll join us or let your colleagues know. That's again 3 to 4:30. If you're not already signed up for our list for publications, events, and other programs, please consider doing so. We do not put anyone else on the list. I want to thank Sarah, who's multitasking, doing the podcast, getting snacks, and making all the arrangements. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you to the panel and to my coaches, for your